Welcome! Today we'll be covering the Toulmin model, a model of argumentative logic that asks you to think like a skeptic. Stephen Toulmin was a philosopher who proposed that being a skeptic, or a doubter of even your own propositions, made for the strongest arguments. If you think about your claim, or the idea that you want to argue, chances are that you know you need to have some degree of persuasiveness. When we support our claims, we turn to hard evidence, or what Toulmin calls the grounds. These statistics, studies, and other firm supports are absolutely compelling. But Toulmin argues that there's another dimension here that he calls warrants. Warrants serve as a bridge to join together the claim and the grounds. Let's look at a sample. I want to argue that cats who live indoors have better, healthier lives than those who stay outside, and I have the data to back it up. But if I were a skeptic, I could respond by saying that none of that proves that cats who live indoors have better lives. But if I add that most of early cat mortality is due to dangers found outdoors, like cars, poisons, and predators, then my argument is much more solid. Here's another example. Our student, we'll call her Jane, is going to argue that donating secondhand clothes to Africa actually hinders them rather than helping them. Jane's point is solid. In 2015, East Africa tried to ban all secondhand clothing imports. But why? Was it solely for economic reasons? Maybe they had religious or moral objections to Mickey Mouse shirts. But if Jane explores her warrant, she can point to supply and demand and discuss how importing clothing makes the local textile market essentially worthless. Still unconvinced about the importance of warrants? Let's take a look at some solid statistical reasoning from a website called Spurious Correlations. This data notes that when Nicolas Cage makes more movies, the number of swimming pool deaths rise. And while it's possible that those movies were just bad, we can safely agree that these two things have nothing in common. This leads to a fallacy called post hoc ergo propter hoc. Basically, that correlation does not imply causality. You can also think of warrants as interpretations of data. Take a look at how interpreting my data here, and supplying additional evidence in the form of backing or support for my warrants, makes my entire argument stronger. Finally, let's take a look at this Heinz ketchup advertisement. What would you say the primary claim is? If you point to the tagline down below, you'd be right. No one grows ketchup like Heinz. What are the grounds? Well, the ketchup bottle is made of tomatoes, and tomatoes only. This bottle doesn't include corn syrup or flavorings of any kind, which many of Heinz's competitors use in their ketchup. But why? What's the importance of having ketchup made from tomatoes? Let's think about what we value in our food today. Words like natural and organic come to mind. Heinz is asking you to interpret their tomato bottle as proof that they make the most natural ketchup around. Okay, let's recap. Remember that a warrant is an interpretation of your data that demonstrates how the evidence supports the claim. As you develop your own warrants, remember that the interpretation should be reasonable and grounded in fact. Don't assume that Nicolas Cage and drownings have anything to do with each other. Find logical interpretations. Finally, do Stephen Toulmin proud, and think of your own argument like a skeptic would.